Hey there. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to give it a minute or two for others to join, but great to have you here. If you have not yet attended an Empower Live session, no problem. I have a few instructions to make sure you have a fantastic time. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a button called Q&A. At any point during this session, including right now, please feel free to drop us some questions, as many as you'd like. We have staff on hand available to answer all of your questions. I highly recommend you ask questions earlier rather than later. If you get to the last few minutes of the live session, we may not be able to get to your question. So early questions are fantastic. And I think that's given everyone enough time to join. So welcome everyone. This is Empower's first financial planning live session. Great to have everyone here. My name is Claire Allman. I'm an associate director of marketing at Empower, and I've been here a little over 6 years now, actually. And something that's always really impressed me about Empower, one of the reasons I love it, is that we're a company of former international students here to make the education journey for future international students much better than we experienced it. And so here today, I have Mac Wallace, who is our financial expert, as well as Arbaz Hashmi, who is our international student expert. And I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves in a moment. But first, I am going to send out a poll so we can get to know you a little bit better. And then they will introduce themselves while you're answering our poll. So that has been launched. And then I'm going to send it over to Mac. Mac, do you mind introducing yourselves for our audience?
Absolutely. Hey there, everyone. My name is Mac. I'm a senior director here and I lead financial products. I'm joining you today as your financial expert. My passion is building great financial products, which is what brought me to Empower 3 years ago. At Empower, I work on our forward-looking credit algorithm. It's because of our forward-looking credit algorithm that we are able to approve international students like you coming to the United States and Canada without needing a collateral or cosigner because we believe in your future potential. And we do so at competitive fixed interest rates. So looking forward to today's theme on financial planning.
Fantastic. And then Arbaz, same question. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure thing. Thank you, Claire. Hey, everyone. My name is Arbaz Hashmi. I belong to a small city in India called Lucknow. Currently, I'm finishing up my MBA at Johns Hopkins University in Maryland. And before this, I worked with Empower for almost, I think in almost every capacity, as a partner, as a full-time, as a part-time intern. And I used to manage partnerships for the organization. And I think I'll have a unique lens of looking at things from both sides, both from a lender side as well as from a student side. And I'm thrilled to share any experience or tips with the students here for the journey ahead. Looking forward to the session today. Thank you so much, Claire.
Awesome. I feel like you must like us, Arbaz. Cool. So if you have not yet answered the poll, now is your time. I'm going to close it in a moment. But if you just joined this live session, a quick announcement. If you have questions for us, please use the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen to ask questions anytime, and one of our staff will get back to you. Earlier is better than later, as towards the end, it's hard to get to everyone sometimes. So please ask your questions as you have them. Don't save them to the end. Great. So I'm going to end our poll. Lovely. And then I'm going to share the results as well. So it looks like today we have wonderful representation from Africa at 77%, a little bit of East Asia, but then 10% from South and Southeast Asia, which is fantastic. No one from Europe, that is okay. And then some representation from Middle East, North America, and South America. So great to have everyone. Ooh, a lot of diversity on the career field. It looks like mostly everyone's here for business, business management. That's great. Arbaz and I are both MBA candidates, so that's good fit. And then runner-ups are engineering, manufacturing technology, and then a lot of some spread across agriculture, natural resources, health science, and human services, and communications. Yes, the best question. Where do you want to go on vacation? So it looks like a sunny beach wins with an exclamation point, a sunny beach, a lively city, a snowy mountain, quiet forest in that order, but no clear winner. Very few of you want to stay in your house or a staycation, but I guess if you're interested in studying abroad, perhaps it's the wrong population to like that. So I'm a snowy mountain person, or maybe a quiet forest, less so in the city. Mac, what are you?
Ooh, I think this time of year, a sunny beach definitely beckons to me. So I would echo that.
Sunny beach, nice. Arbaz, what about you?
Staycation, love my house. Definitely.
Arbaz
Pick the
is
last option.
2%. Lovely, lovely. All we accept everyone
Yeah.
here. So I'm gonna stop sharing. Great. So just to get us started off, we're going to talk a little bit about the return on investment, or ROI, of a loan. And so if you hear me say ROI today, just means return on investment. I know around the world that doesn't always stand for that. So starting with you, Arbaz, do you mind just talking through, as an international student, how you thought about the return on investment of a student loan, of your student loan?
Well, I think the return on investment is something that was calculated pretty much around like at the application stage. While I was figuring out my options, with every school that I picked or did not pick, I did have a research on figuring out, okay, what is the average salary that I could earn from each of those schools, and based on that, what is the amount of expense or the cost that I would be incurring for each of those schools as well. Having said that, there is also a very not so absolute way of figuring out an ROI as well. That's how I thought about it, because the US experience comes very handy when you're looking for have some mobility in your profile, and that is something that I wanted for myself. I wanted to move out of the country, at least travel for a bit, for at least 5 to 10 years, stay in a different country, work in a different country. That was my goal, and that was exactly where I was coming from. So, and the US experience definitely helped in that regard, because the university that I was going to, plus the US experience, is globally recognized. So having said that, a loan definitely made sense, because the way I'm looking at driving a return on investment from this is not in the next 2 years, but for the next 10 years. So it definitely, stands very well, stands awesome in regards to the cost that I would be incurring, which, I mean, it's substantial. It's not, I did have a loan and have a scholarship, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the session as well. But even with a combination of sources of funds to fulfill my education, I was still pretty confident that the return on investment is going to happen with like in the way I want, or at least in some way that is definitely better than what I had.
And so I think a lot of people planning for their education might be having a lot of, feelings about the experience. Can you describe sort of how you felt through the process and perhaps how you're feeling now?
I think the process was a blur, to be honest, because while you are looking for, yeah, while you're figuring out your college and your test prep and everything else and the loan and the visa, you don't really have time to think. You are a machine and you just have to keep going at it. So it definitely makes sense to have a plan beforehand so that you have your deadlines and timelines all in set. But I think it kind of hit me right around July, as soon as I got my passport with the visa stamp on it, that, oh shit, I'll be moving to US now. And I did not think, maybe I did not plan this through. I started having second thoughts, cold feet. And it was definitely overwhelming. I remember, I mean, I wouldn't be shying from admitting that I shed a lot of tears coming here. And even after coming here as well, it's going to be a tough transition, both, while you are figuring out the whole process at the same time while you're actually moving here. It definitely helps to have a sound plan. And I think that what helped me, because I had a bit of an experience working with students for about 4 or 5 years before I actually went for mine. So it kind of trained my mind to think in that aspect as well. To be honest, I did not actually plan. It's just my work experience helped me. But my tip would be to not repeat what I did. Do have a plan and place anything on paper. At least have some sort of a calendar, timelines, marked, wherein you know that, okay, by this time I need to finish off those things, because you would not have time to think and then take a step, breathe. These words do not mean anything when you're figuring out an international education in these times, especially post-COVID.
Awesome. And so last question before I have a few for Mac. So Arbaz, you mentioned you wish you had had a much stronger plan. Do you have any more detail there, any more advice points? What do you wish you had done at a high level?
I definitely think I should have prepared better for my test. because that kind of helps with it directly linked to the number of options of universities that you have then. And then definitely a lot of funding options do open up when you get into a lot of universities where otherwise you would not, because first of all, I mean, there are sources of funding that you can get through the universities. They have their own options. At the same time, as from a lender point of view as well, they look at your profile in a much more lucrative way. And a lot of the assessment that happens is through the profile that you build as an international student. And maybe while talking about Empowered, not everything what is about the student. A lot of things are about, other aspects of their profile as well. So it definitely hurt me because I could not get an Empower loan at that time. So having said that, I think figuring out the collateral, because I actually ended up taking a collateralized loan. Shame on me, but I did. And because of that collateralized loan, I had to figure out a lot of documentations beforehand before I could actually submit the application, because they needed the documents of the property, documents of my parents, my own documents, everything to go together. And in order to get that done, just to prepare the document, I think it took me about a month or so to collect everything, because you don't really think about using your properties as a collateral all the time, right? It's just at a moment of need, that's when it hits you. Oh, I would need the paper, I would need the documentation, let's collect everything. And that, I think, delayed my process by a month. And then I got COVID. So I was in a time like between April and May, I was very sure that, okay, this is not happening. Thankfully, I got better and everything and was able to get that done. But you see that these things were not planned. COVID just kind of delayed my entire journey by a month. Thankfully, I was fortunate enough to get a visa slot, to get a visa interview, but in today's time, it's not even guaranteed for a lot of other students. So plan well and start early as soon as possible. I think that is the key and the tip that I could give you. It's already Feb, so anybody who's trying for 2023, you should already be looking at your options for funding, if not applications right now. But I don't want to scare anyone, but please follow your own timeline.
Awesome. So thank you for sharing, Arbaz. So Mac, Arbaz is clearly, telling us more about why planning well in advance is really important. So this is a perfect lead in for you. So do you mind just talking a little bit about what you consider the essential components of a financial plan or planning for an education abroad?
Absolutely. So first off, a international education is an incredible investment that you are about to make in yourself. Arbaz, as he shared from his current education at Johns Hopkins, Claire is a local alum from University of Maryland. I myself went to Cornell University. These are internationally renowned schools and set you on a totally different trajectory in your career and in your life. And we all have friends who now live and are from around the world. And it really sets you up for earning a lot more postgraduate and just a totally different trajectory. So I want to just echo everything that's been shared there, and that this is a really exciting moment in which you're about to embark on. The core components, though, of a successful financial plan has three components in my view. One is scholarships, and those could be from a university, a nonprofit, or other sources. Empower, we are a social benefit corporation. We want to see you succeed. We also offer our own international student scholarships. So feel free to check that out on our website. The second pillar is around financing. So the cost of education is significant. It's also a significant investment, and loans are there to help you bridge the costs today with your future earnings that you'll earn postgraduate. And then the third is around personal savings and earnings. So these are funds that you already bring potentially to your graduate or undergraduate degree, and that you'll be able to use to fund your education or living expenses while in school.
Fantastic. So Arbaz, you hear that? A little bit more about financial planning. So you already shared that it's never too early to think about a financial plan, but there's one part where there's sort of the visa interview, which I remember that you, took a little time to get through. How did you plan the visa aspects of your plan?
Well, I was very scared, to be honest. That's how I will start it. And it is a scary process, and it can make you forget anything that you have memorized or learned from heart. It's that nerve-wracking. But like Mac mentioned about the financial plan, I mean, I think I have heard interviews of so many people while I was there. I have seen demo interviews on YouTube and while learning them. I've spoken to visa officers, like who ex-visa officers who are actually helping students out with the visa interviews. And with everyone, one question that has come in all the mock interviews, which is that, well, how are you financing your education? How are you funding your education? And that's, I don't know what is it about this question, but it's something that kind of gives them a clear idea if this person should be granted a visa or not. Because right after that question, in a couple of minutes, you actually either get a decision like approval or a rejection on your application. But it's very important to have those things sorted out. And if you did not plan well here, it's going to look that way on the I-20 as well, or any of the documents that you're showing. So if you did not plan well about your visa, about your education in terms of how you're funding it, and you just figured out from multiple sources, about 5-6 different sources, it's definitely going to give a red flag that you did not plan this well. You are trying to cover up with any source that you can get, and you are then collecting debt, or you are borrowing money from your family and friends from different sources. That doesn't look good on your application. I wouldn't say that there's a number to the number of sources that you can have on the I-20, but definitely it looks what a clean financial plan is about. You're very confident about the amount of funds that you are getting from each of those sources. In mine, thankfully, I got a scholarship of 50%. So I had a bit of a scholarship plus a loan. Only 2 sources to fund my education. It worked very well. I was definitely scared, but it kind of happened in 40 seconds, whatever had to happen in the interview. But these things do matter when you go for your visa interview. And even if you not even talking about the visa interview, it should start right when you're thinking about colleges or universities. Can I afford this college? Where would I get the funds from? For every option that you choose, you should figure out if this option, can I get funding or not? And that is when you should pick up. It doesn't make sense to get selected to a college and then figure out, oh, I can't get funded for this one.
Awesome. So just to summarize, so one, it may always start as early as possible. I think just summarizing a little bit what Mac and Arbaz said, if you can get started now, there's no reason to wait. There are 3 pillars of a financial plan. There are scholarships, financing or loans, or personal savings or earnings. Last, as Arbaz just shared, a diversity of funding sources often helps with your visa interview as well. So moving us along. So Mac, just I want to focus first on the financing aspect of the financial plan. So can you tell us a little bit about what Empower funds can be used for?
Absolutely. Thank you, Claire. Empower student loan funds can be used to pay for tuition, fees, health insurance, and supplies for school. For U.S. schools, you can also use funds to cover living expenses and other costs that you'll incur for your education, like housing and a meal plan. Empower funds, all international students are eligible for up to $100,000 in financing from Empower over the course of your total program, and that's limited to $50,000 per academic period. We send funds directly to your university. There's a certification process that occurs there. So that's a really seamless, hassle-free process for you. That is also a benefit.
Great. So Mac, why is Empower the best loan or financing option for international students? If this is one of the big pillars, why are we the pillar these students should go with? Why are we the pillar? Sorry, but yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, so we believe in your financial independence. That's why our loan product never requires a collateral, never requires a cosigner, does not require pre-existing credit history, and indeed, we help you build U.S. credit history upon arrival here in North America. So we believe in your financial independence, and it's through our credit algorithm that we're able to take a future look at who we think you can be in the future post-graduation and your future earnings. We are also, we have the highest coverage of student lenders out there. So we support all degree types. We support lending at over 400 universities in the United States and Canada, and obviously all of the majors that they support and study at those schools. And we lend to people in over 190 geographies. So wherever you are in the world, chances are you'll be able to apply and get an Empower loan. And then the third thing that I'll say is just our loan amounts and sizes. So I mentioned we will lend up to $100K for your total program cost. Most people don't need that much, but in the event that you're going and MBAs, for example, are expensive, prestigious, 2-year STEM degrees are as well. We're here for you to cover what the other pillars may not cover already around personal savings or scholarships. So we're here to help you cover that full program cost.
Fantastic. And so one question for Arbaz real quick. Earlier, you mentioned that you had a collateralized loan from someone that wasn't Empower, but we know here that Empower is the best program for international students, the best loan option for international students. So can you tell our audience a little bit why that happened and perhaps why you wish you had gotten an Empower loan?
Well, Empower at that time, when I was looking for an educational student loan, it only funded up to $50,000. And my requirement was about 80, somewhere around that bracket. So kind of, I totally lament, and I wish I could get my loan refinanced. And now that I have a STEM designation in my MBA, I think that could happen. I'm very hopeful that I could quickly get my loan refinanced. So that was the only thing that happened. Otherwise, I'd have totally come to Empower for a student loan for my education. That goes without saying. I mean, a loan without collateral and cosigner, it's best deal that any student can get, something that people should know. I mean, once you get here, you realize how expensive life is, and you realize that no cosigner, no collateral loan makes a lot more sense.
Awesome. And then Mac, you alluded to something earlier that I'm going to have you clarify. There's a misconception that Empower only gives loans to people that have personal savings or scholarships. Can you just clarify that one more time for our audience?
Yeah, so that's not true. We will fund up to 100% of tuition and fees. And this is true even if you don't have any personal savings or scholarships. Saying that though, personal savings and scholarships, please tell us on your loan application if you do have those. Telling us won't negatively impact your application, though having those in some situations could help you. So the message here is be honest around your financial plan. And if, for example, the program cost is $50,000 and you have savings worth, let's call it $20,000, but we could approve you for the full $50,000, we'll always tell you if you could be approved for more. So because of that, it's important to be honest and share with us if you do or don't have financing, additional funding sources. As I said, though, it doesn't negatively impact you. We just want to get a holistic view of this financial situation you do have.
Fantastic. So I noticed a lot of people have joined that weren't here right when we got started. Quick note, if you have questions for us of any of our conversation points or sparking something you want to learn more about, please drop it in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We'll get back to you very soon with an answer to your question. But back to Mac. So our audience today, they may be new to credit overall. I saw that about half of our audience is still thinking about planning for their education. Can you explain the key terms of an Empower student loan to our audience today?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll start with the loan term. So there is a in-school period, and then there's the repayment period after you graduate. So the in-school period is up to 2.5 years. So if your program is 2 years long, plus an additional 6 months after you graduate, that's the in-school period. And then the following 10 years after that is the repayment period. So with an Empower loan, we disperse funds directly to the university, and that's when the start of the loan officially starts. So as you take out more funding semester by semester and it's dispersed, that is when the clock, so to speak, starts ticking or starts with the loans. There are no upfront fees, and interest starts accruing only once those funds are sent to the university. So the first initial 2 years, interest accrues and you make interest-only payments. And then the next 10 years is when you repay the loan and your balances start decreasing. There are no prepayment penalties. In fact, a lot of very successful students prepay their loans much earlier than the 10 years, which is great to see. That means you're being successful in your careers. So that's definitely something that we encourage. Our interest rate is competitive and it's fixed. So you are able to know over the course of your time with the loan and be able to budget and know that you have consistent monthly payments. A variable rate loan, meanwhile, those payments could go up, they could also go down. based on market conditions. And right now with global macroeconomic trends, a lot of those interest rates are increasing. So a fixed interest rate is also a benefit to you these days.
Great. And so you spoke a little bit about fixed interest rate, why we're awesome. Can you go more into detail about how interest rates are calculated here at Empower? We get a lot of questions about what that looks like and how people should be thinking about that.
For sure. Are you indicating like APR or which direction should I take that in, Claire?
Um, just how is interest charged in the loan? Is it on the whole
Okay.
amount when it's dispersed? Or I think a lot of people think that if they get a loan for, let's say, $50,000, interest starts in all of it immediately, for example.
Got it. Okay. So interest begins accruing once those funds are sent to your school. So if you apply for a loan today and you get approved, though you don't start your program until August or September, nothing would be due until your first payment in the fall, and only after funds are dispersed to your university. So if you need 25,000, for example, for your first semester, then 25 for your second semester, that additional 25K interest would only start accruing in the spring semester once those funds are sent to your university. During the course of the semester as well, funds can be sent in tranches, and it's only once those are sent to your university that interest begins accruing. We have a fixed rate, so interest accrues at a more or less constant rate over the life of the loan.
Fantastic. So I think we've gone through some of the introduction just to get people acquainted with loans and how they work and how we think about them at Empower. I'm going to turn it over to Mac to walk through the financial portion of our application in detail. So heads up that we'll be sending out a recording of this as well as the deck we're going through. So don't feel the need, do you need to screenshot or write things down? We'll be sending out a recording after this. And then over to Mac.
Great. Thank you, Claire. And if there are questions during this, do let me know. Great. So our online application is broken down into a few steps. There's eligibility, there's basic information, there's school and employment history, there's financial information, and then you upload and verify your ID and you submit your loan application. So these are the steps. Today, we're going to focus on this financial step in particular so that you can fill out the loan application with confidence. And so when you land on the financial information page within the application, it's going to look like this. And the first step here is understanding what your total program cost might be. So embedded within how much your program will cost are things like tuition, your cost of living, any additional costs, maybe health insurance. And so the first step here would be to get that information from your admissions letter or your university website, and understand what your total program cost might be and insert it here. The next step, once you understand the total cost of your program, is understanding of the three pillars of your financial plan, what are the other two pillars before financing might be? So here, you would enter things like scholarships or grants as a funding source. In this example, the program costs about $60,000 a year, and the next step here would be to enter any scholarships or grants that I might have. So you go in here and you're able to enumerate each. If you have any personal savings or earnings, or expect to get funds from a family member or friend, you can also insert it here. If you have multiple scholarships, you are encouraged to delineate and itemize and select and enter each individual one here. That will simplify the process later on as you give us documentation and explain each individual scholarship you may have earned. So in this example, I've gone through and I've edited them. I indicate the kind of funding source that the scholarship or grant is coming from and enter it in here. Again, if I have a sponsor, I will indicate it here. And if there are any personal accounts or earnings that I expect to draw from, I could also enter it here. And if I expect external support from a family member, you have the opportunity to also select that here. I think our audience today are mainly students who are applying for a future. If you're an enrolled student, you can tell us how much is already prepaid and customize your loan amount appropriately. We will also ask if you have any other student loans that you've already been approved of and anticipate using to fund your program. This does not adversely impact your loan application. We're not jealous, so to speak. If you have other sources of financing that you intend to use, do let us know on the loan application. And here you have the opportunity to enter the details there. Great. So first step is entering your total program cost. The second step is entering your funding sources from scholarships, grants, and personal earnings or wages. And then from there, you understand what is the difference between the cost of my program and the funding sources that I already have available. And that's called the funding gap. So looking at this, it looks like I need at least $18,000 in Empower funds to cover the total program costs with the additional funding with the additional funds required. 18,000 should be seen as a floor. So because you have $5,000 in scholarships, you can always request more and save that money for a future date or for living expenses that you might need in the future. So this funding gap really should be seen as a reasonable place to start, and you can increase it or decrease it from there. And then from here, you agree and you continue. We will always tell you if you are approved for more. So if you enter $18,000 here, for example, but you would be approved for $25,000, we would tell you as a part of your loan application. So I get a lot of questions around, well, how much in funding should I request or ask for? And the short answer is you should always request what you think you'll need. And we can always tell you if you qualify for more or for less on your loan application. And in this instance, congratulations, on the next screen, I've been conditionally approved for an Empower loan. So Claire, that is a walkthrough of our financial module here. What questions are we getting from the audience?
Give me a moment to see. There are so many questions, just going through them. So just give me a second. But thank you so much, Mac. Let's see. What are some themes I'm seeing?
Claire, can I pump in here with some questions I've seen? So Mac, there have been a lot of questions about funding sources and when do we need or not need funding sources? Why is it important? So if you could just elaborate on that.
Yep. So as mentioned earlier, it's important to be honest and transparent around your additional funding sources. Why additional funding sources are important are that that funding gap that you saw on your application, if that gap exceeds what we can lend to you, that will potentially adversely affect your loan application. So it's important to share with us additional sources of funding if you have them, in the event that you would be approved without that, essentially a buffer. Saying that though, we do lend up to 100% of tuition and fees, and it really depends on the program that you're going to and the future earning potential of that degree. When it's important to list it is when it's going to be a significant source of funds that you are going to contribute to your program to cover the cost. So if it's relatively small, not as concerning, but if it's pretty significant in the thousands, for example, as opposed to the hundreds, that's a good kind of discerning level upon which you should itemize and indicate what your additional funding sources might be.
So I have a follow-up question, Mac, which is, can you talk a little bit more about the documentation we need for each funding source and what the requirements there are for us?
Great question. So we will ask to verify the information that you state on your financial plan. So if you say that you have a scholarship for a certain amount, we will ask for a letter confirming that you have won that scholarship. Same thing with sponsorship. We will ask for proof of that sponsorship and the approximate amount. For earnings and for savings, we'll ask for bank statements that are from the last 90 days to verify those sources of funds, and so on and so forth. If for some reason it's not possible to get documentation related to something, you can let us know and we'll consider your application without that financial source, and you can continue on within the loan application process.
Cool. And just to add on to what Max shared, a lot of times people ask why we need documentation. We trust you, but we're verifying. So any claim you make in our application will likely ask for a document just to show everything is what you say it is. And so just a heads up as you fill it out, if you have that documentation available, it's often the same things you needed to apply to school, plus the documents Mac just reviewed with you. So I know we get a lot of questions. Oh, please go ahead.
Just re-emphasizing that our loan has no collateral, has no cosigner. If you don't have an existing credit history, you will still get approved. And because of all of those things, we ask for documentation related to your financial sources when they are available, because that's really the crux and the important information here. So it's a trade-off. So we believe in your financial independence and we trust you, and it's meant to verify that.
Awesome. Thanks, Mac. And so I know we've spoken a lot about loans today, but Arbaz, I have a few follow-up questions about scholarships, and you mentioned that you even have one earlier. So can you talk a little bit more about scholarships, how to look for them, any advice you have around them?
I definitely got one from the university, so mine was the easiest because we got, like, as it is, just eligible for the university as soon as we finish an application. But I think there are other sources. Friends actually got a few scholarships from non-university sources. Now, these scholarships are eligibility based, so either it's a demographic, either it's a qualification or of some bit of a work experience or in a particular industry that you're going to. And what I've seen is the narrower you can get to the eligibility part, as soon as the broader it is, the more applicants you'll get. So it's going to be very obvious. So the narrow you can get, it's going to be few applicants and you'll have a good chance of winning that scholarship. And another tip that someone should remember while looking for scholarship is you can always figure out multiple scholarship options that could supplement your entire education. Right? Instead of going for one scholarship that could fund your entire education, look for multiple sources. I mean, even in my school, there are students who got full scholarships, but there are less than 5% of the entire batch or entire cohort. So it's not going to be very popular. It's not going to be, that a lot in numbers, those full ride scholarships. But one should always remember that they can get something from the school and at the same time get something from an external source as well. There are a lot of websites out there as well. I remember Buddy for Study. There's definitely one of them that offers a lot of scholarship. There are other sources as well that people can actually go to. One of my friends went through the Fulbright program that's between US and some other countries only. So you can actually get eligible and work and get a stipend as well through them. She worked at University of Massachusetts through that Fulbright program. There are other sources as well. There's EduCanada. There's another website that that we normally talk about is EduPass, that one could actually visit. I think there are a few scholarships over there as well. There are internationalstudent.com that you can look for scholarships, and other search engines too, which actually helps. But the idea is to do not look for these things once you have received the admit. You should plan these things as you're figuring out which schools to apply to, so that for this school I could apply for these scholarships. And for every option that you have a sound financial plan to turn towards, which includes either a loan or scholarship or both.
Awesome. And so Empower actually offers lots of scholarships for international students. And I think one of our chat moderators will drop that in the chat for you if you're interested in looking to see what else we offer. You do not need to be an Empower borrower to apply for our scholarships. We get that question a lot, actually. Anyone can apply. If you're an international student, please take a look. There's likely an option there for you. But back to Mac, we have another question from the audience. Is it true that my loan offer is reduced if I don't have anything to offer in terms of personal savings for my program?
Not necessarily. So just as we said earlier, be honest and transparent on the financial information that you share. It doesn't adversely affect you. It could help you get approved for a larger loan amount though, so it could positively impact you. So be honest on your loan application.
Great. And then, wow, more questions from the audience. So Arbaz, Mac, you both might be able to contribute to this one. Maybe we'll start with Arbaz, but if you work part-time, should that income be included on the application?
Definitely. And it was the case with me as well. So before even coming here, I did have a part-time job on campus that I was going to join. And it didn't really start at that time, but I did have an offer and everything. And kind of it adds well to your whole application package, that especially at the time of visa, that you are serious about it. You're even secured a part-time employment out there. You should totally mention it on any document that you are applying to, where you have to mention about your financial plan. Like, do you want to add something to it?
I would echo what Arbaz shared. If it's a significant contributor to your education and your source of funds, you should list on your application.
Awesome. And then, so Mac, a lot of people have trouble or some questions about how to figure out the cost of their program. What's the best way of going about that?
Great question. So the cost will be stated on documents like your admissions letter, your I-20, or anything issued to you by your university. It's also publicly available on their website. So you can publicly look it up if, for example, you've applied but haven't gained admission yet into your university. That information is publicly available. And if you need to consult the International Students Office of your university or the Financial Aid or Admissions Office, they're usually very open and welcome to doing that as well. So as you're filling out the total program cost, things like your tuition and fees are the most important there within that. And then things like living expenses, health insurance, those can be estimates for now, knowing that your I-20 at a later date will specify the exact amounts. So that's how you should think about if you're in the process of applying or haven't yet received an admissions letter or an I-20 related to how to fill that out.
Great. And so Arbaz, if someone has a cosigner and they want to use it to Empower, what does that mean? Do we accept cosigners?
Well, you don't really need a cosigner. That's the beauty of an Empower loan, right? Even if you have one, it's good, but you don't really need a cosigner for getting an Empower loan. So feel free to just apply without even thinking about it.
Nice. And so Mac, question for you. I think some people, we spoke a little bit about how interest works earlier. I think we need to go into a bit more detail. Can you kind of walk us through the student life cycle, as in when they start paying what, when they arrive to school, the grace period, and what happens after graduation? Do you mind walking us through that?
Yeah, so I'll start on the high level and then drill down a little bit more. We have a in-school period and then a post-graduation period. So your in-school period can be up to 2.5 years, which is the length of your program, an additional 6 months of grace after your program. And then from there, it's 10 years of repayments. Within the in-school period, you will make interest-only payments on your loan, which helps you to build U.S. credit history and get established here in the United States. And then over the next 10 years is when you pay back the loan in full. In terms of how fees and interest accrue, you will pay nothing until your loan is dispersed to your university. And then your first payment there during the in-school period will be somewhere between typically 30 to 45 days of when those funds are dispersed to the university. So if you're applying now for admissions in the fall, you won't pay anything in terms of interest or any fees until about October-ish, depending on when you start your program. And then there are no prepayment penalties associated with your loan. So after the 2.5 years of in school and the grace period thereafter, you get a job. And then from there, you start making full payments on your loan. And many students pay back faster than the 10 years as they succeed in their careers, which is great to see. And that reduces the total amount of interest that they would pay on the loan.
Great. Thank you, Mac. And I think we have time for one or a few more questions before we start to wrap up. So if you are in the audience and you haven't put a question in the Q&A and you have a burning question, now is the time to add it. So we have time to get back to you. But Arbaz, I have someone that wants to know the difference between a co-signer and a sponsor. Can you share more about the difference there?
Yeah, I think a co-signer is something that is attached to a loan. Now, this could be a person that you know professionally, personally, and they are willing to come on an application on the loan with you, which means technically that if you default on that loan, they are liable to repay as well. And they are part of the loan application because they are signing that loan and that guarantee that you will be repaying. Whereas the sponsor could just be any organization and individual and entity who's funding part of your education or a whole, through some funds or through direct deposit to this university, whichever way you want to talk about it. The university could be a sponsor, but they are giving you a scholarship. Your employer could be a sponsor. They are funding your education. Your parents could be a sponsor as well. If they're not coming on the loan application, but they're just giving you the money to use for their education. It's a term that could be used for anything, but a cosigner is very specific to a loan.
Awesome. Great answer, Arbaz. And so follow-up question for Mac. You mentioned earlier about not needing a credit history to apply with Empower, but I have someone here that wants to know how their credit rating or their credit score may affect their loan application. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, for sure. We will look at credit history in your credit report if one is available. It doesn't adversely impact you if you don't have one. In fact, a lot of our students are young and don't have any credit history in either the US, Canada, or their home country. When we do take a look at your credit history, if it's available, we want to look at things like delinquencies, missed payments, any negative information, which would adversely impact your loan application. Conversely, though, seeing a positive and a great credit score can also positively impact your application. So when it's available, we will take a look. Having no credit history, though, does not negatively impact you at all.
Awesome. And so another question for Arbaz. So can you tell our audience more about what schools we work with and what programs we work with? And then our chat moderator might be able to drop a link in the chat as a follow-up.
I believe that the last count, Empower was working with about 427 universities in the US and Canada, that I remember. Now, right, and these universities are pretty top-notch. They're pretty good and have a good ranking as well in almost all the ranking systems. We fund almost every degree program out there. And for some schools, I think we have even took some diplomas in Canada. That's only in Canada. But for US, every degree seeking program is eligible for an Empower loan, and we only fund the last 2 years of the education. So if you are in a master's program, that works pretty well because we could cover potentially the entire program. If you're an undergrad, we could only cover the 3rd and the 4th year or the last 2 years of your education, no matter how long your program is.
And so something we pride ourselves on at Empower is we work with schools that have data showing positive outcomes for international students. So if you see a school on our list, you know that we've looked at the data and we're willing to fund there. And so that's a little bit more about how we look at schools. It's we know there's some positive outcomes, so you can be in trust that it's a good program for you. And so, Mac, I think I have another question before we wrap up, which is, so it's a two-part. One is, can you review one more time the minimum loan amount and maximum loan amount, and then talk through again what our loan can be used for in the US versus Canada?
Great. So our minimum loan amount is $2,000, $2,001. Forgot the one. And our maximum loan amount is $100,000. That is US dollars. Funds can be used to cover up to 100% of your tuition cost in the United States. That includes also additional fees like health insurance and living expenses. In Canada, that is a little bit school by school. So we will fund 100% of tuition and associated fees. For living expenses, though, you will need to consult your university as to whether they support that or not. But in the United States, that's the case for everyone. So we offer a modern 21st century student loan tailored to the needs of international students. As mentioned, we believe in your future potential. So that's a loan without any cosigner, no collateral, no prior credit history is required. And we indeed help you to build credit history in the United States. And as I mentioned, funds can be used to cover 100% of your tuition costs, up to $100,000.
Fantastic. And so last 5 minutes group. So I have some takeaway questions or some follow-up questions for both of you, and starting with you, Arbaz. What is the number one tip? If you could only give people one piece of advice planning for their future education abroad, what would that one tip be? Or what's that one advice point?
Start planning as early as possible and start looking at your plan as a whole, not as a sequential steps of things, but because everything is connected. You can't get into a university that you can't get funding for. So even if no matter how well you study for the test or get that application, if you can't fund that tuition fees, you won't be able to live that dream. So plan well, plan early, and plan as a whole. Do not think about the next step when you get to it. Think about it 2 steps when you're 2 steps away from that step. That's how when you start thinking about those things. It's the first step towards graduate education, is how I put it.
And so, Arbaz, can you talk a little bit about how planning for your future career is also included there in that multi-step process?
I mean, that's how it starts, right? I wanted something in my career. That's when I thought of going for international education, right? And those things, that final output, that final state that you have in your mind should always be there. And everything that you do should be in service of that. So when you start talking about a career in the US or a different country, you need to understand that the job search is very different. You need to understand that the way networking happens, the way you can be referred to a job is quite different from our home countries, right? And it's definite. I have lived through that, and it's very night and day. It's a process where you have to curate those networks, those referrals, and they're going to refer you to a particular opportunity that you're interested in. But at the same time, you have to go out there and do those things, which is very opposite to what I have been taught all my life, that you don't have to talk to strangers. Whereas in networking, you actually do that, right? So having said that, I think it's very important to plan for how you're going to supplement those skills. Some universities do help students with that. But not a lot of universities actually have a proper standardized program to help these students, especially international students, to go. In fact, my university did not have a proper plan for international students, right? Something that's in the works right now, but I know that Empower has a program that focuses specifically on helping its borrowers be ready for the job search and for the career ahead after their education. And that, I think that kind of helps a lot as a game changer, because here's a player that's really invested in your success, because Empower will only get the money back when you start earning the money. So you can't get a better champion for yourself, a lender who has invested the money in your success. And I think we can totally talk a little bit about the Path to Success program, but I think that's a very good initiative, something that every international student needs, even if they do not know it before coming here, that they need career support, but they will definitely.
Actually, I think our chat moderator can drop a link to our Past Success Career Services program for anyone interested. And in fact, our Past Success program is leading a webinar to help you plan your career later this year. So take a look at our website for future live sessions and please join us there. So thanks, Arbaz, for the natural segue. And Mac, similar question for you. If you could have our audience take one takeaway from this session, only one, what would that one takeaway be?
I'm going to cheat a little bit and I'm going to give two. One is just to say international education is an incredible investment that you're about to make in yourself. And I just want to reemphasize that. And it's truly incredible and is going to set you on to a totally different trajectory in your life and your earnings potential. So congratulations on the bravery of taking that big step. The second thing I want to convey is that studying abroad in the United States or Canada is achievable, regardless of your financial background or situation. As we shared today, it does take planning and patience. And remember the 3 pillars of a financial plan that we shared here today. So scholarships, financing, and personal savings and earnings. But it is achievable. And many of the students that we help and we lend to would not have been able to afford their education otherwise. And we're very proud of that. So here at Empower, we believe in your future potential and want to set you up for academic, financial, and professional success. So wishing you all the best, and hopefully this hour here today was very helpful to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mac. And thank you, Arbaz, for joining us today. So we'll be sending out a recording of this webinar. So anything you may have missed, you can come back and listen to. Same thing with a deck shared. We're also sending out a survey immediately after this webinar. We read through every response in this survey. We'd love to know what you liked, what you disliked. And in fact, this session is a result of some feedback we got in this survey. So please give us some notes to help us improve or tell us what we like so we do more of it. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. We're going to stay on the live session for a few minutes to try to finish up some questions. So we'll go dark, but you can stay on to see if we can get to your question. Otherwise, thank you so much. We'll see you soon. Thank you, Arbaz. Thanks, Mac.